Peterbot and Poya have been North America's best duo all year, and they recently just won FNCS. I watched all their FNCS games and all of their games in a cash cup they recently won, and learned how they play their off spawn, get refreshes in the endgame, and 9 other strategies that they use to dominate this season. Peterbot and Poya landed at red light and rig every game and instantly killed the Machinist. This allowed them to get the Medallion and the Machinist AR. Once they kill the boss, Poyo stays in the POI to continue looting while Peter goes out and looks to trade Surge. This allows them to often get more than 300 Storm Surge before the first zone even closes. They wouldn't always trade with these teams on the south, but when they didn't, they often struggled with Storm Surge later on in the game. After looting off spawn, they would stay in the zone for a long period of time. This serves many purposes. The first is that they are able to refarm all of their mats up safely in the zone. Because Peter often went out to look for Storm Surge tags before farming, he would oftentimes have very few materials in the second or even third zones. They didn't really care though, because they knew that there are tons of places where they can get their materials back in the zone. The other benefit is that they can have much safer rotations into the zone because there are less players around them. In turn, this makes their whole mid game safer. Playing in the zone has always been good, but the Flaming Hoops and Cactus make this strategy almost unbeatable in Chapter 5 Season 3. Because they land on the south side of the map, they also end up in the zone on the south side of the map. This means that they can stay here almost indefinitely by breaking the cacti and getting 30 HP back. Once they need to actually leave the zone, Peter and Poyo could simply use their fizz, then jump through a flaming hoop and get all the way across the map into the zone. They consistently use this strategy to have incredibly clean mid games, and combined with their consistent early games made them one of the most consistent endgame teams across all regions. Once in the third zone, they try to position themselves near a flaming hoop. When the fourth zone reveals and the island spawns, this positioning allows them to instantly get to the island and be the first team on it. By claiming the island, they give themselves a mythic deagle, which Peter is absolutely disgusting with. They also have great sightlines for Surge, but most importantly, by being on island, they can use the launch pads to make easy rotations. They often stayed here until the 6th zone, meaning they could go into the partial zones with capped materials. My favorite part of how they played island though was when they couldn't be the first ones on the flag. On multiple occasions, they got beat to the flag, so they would sit right outside of the contesting area, and then when the island team captured the island, they would sprint in and steal the pistol and the extra loot. Once in the endgame, Peter especially was very good at taking in the information around him and using it to create great paths for him and Poyo to follow. In Game 4 of FNCS, Peter identifies that he needs to avoid these 2 layers because there's a ton of congestion, so he quickly elevates himself. He then sees in front of him this team, so he takes in this information and creates a tarp 2 tiles above them in order to keep himself at a safe distance from the teams below him. From the way he plays, it is very clear that he isn't tunnel visioning on making a certain rotate, but is instead watching the rest of the lobby and taking the extra fraction of a second to make a choice based on what he sees. Peterbot and Poyo took height in many different ways and at many different times, but there was one constant. They always looked to pressure height. Unlike some other teams, they never forced a height take, but just continually pressured height until they were weak and easily killable, or just simply gave up the high ground. Once on the high ground, they would apply tons of pressure to the teams below them, as the Machinist AR is one of the best spray weapons in the game. If a team was getting a little too aggressive towards the high ground, Peter was not afraid to drop down and cause problems for that team. This would often back the height attempt off, allowing Peter and Poyo to get easy endgames from the high ground. When in the endgame, Peter and Poyo are experts at finding easy refreshes. One way they do this is by looking for players that are moving in their tarps below them. This works because if a team is moving and actively doing things, then it is less likely that they are aware of their surroundings, giving you an easy refresh attempt. They do this perfectly in Game 4 of the Duo's Cash Cup, where they see a team running through their tarp on the layer below them. This gives Peter and Poyo the green light to start swinging on their tarps, where they get an easy kill. If this team was standing still in their box and picking up information, it is much more likely that they would have responded to the audio cues of Peter and Poyo's pickaxes and reacted in a way that allowed them to escape. Once their endgames are starting to come to a close, Peter and Poyo have to find a way to extend their games to convert wins and higher placement games. Despite their high-octane W-key playstyle, they aren't afraid to play medkits in the zone when they run out of materials. This allows them to clutch up extra placement points for free, and it also allows for teams to run in front of them, giving them potentially easy refreshes by shooting them in the back. In games where they can get to the final moving zone, they will then have Poyo play as many medkits in the zone as he can, while Peter goes down and tries to get tags onto as many players as possible. Despite their hyper-aggressive playstyle, Peter and Poyo are excellent at slowing their games down and playing to get as much placement as possible. From their drop spot red light rig, Peter and Poyo get the Machinist Medallion, which heals them up to 75 shields. Having this medallion is their biggest advantage, as it allows them to trade Storm Surge with all the teams around them without having to use heals. But this medallion also gives them another secret advantage. When making rotates, they can build less than other teams because they always have infinite heals. When you're less concerned about being hit for 60 damage, you can save a ton of materials throughout the game, leading to easier endgames. Throughout the endgame, Peter and Pollo try to find players who are solos to create easy refresh attempts. They do this by looking for cues from the rest of the lobby. They are constantly looking in tarps to see if the players in the tarps are alone, in which case they are not afraid to jump on them. Other cues that they use are if a player is in a 1x1, it is very likely that they are a solo. This is because it is awkward for a duo to play out of a 1x1, and if they are a duo, it is very likely that they are scuffed, leading to very easy refreshes. We just went over how they find solos, but how do they avoid being seen when they are solos? The main way they do this is by always 2x1ing when they stop moving. This makes it harder for teams to see into your tarp and identify you as a solo, but it also allows you to have more time to survive if a team finds you as a solo. When in a 1x1, it can oftentimes be awkward trying to escape when being pushed by a duo, but if you give yourself an extra box of time, it can often be the difference between dying and surviving in the endgame. One of the best things that separates this team from the rest of North America is how well they do the little things. For example, here Peter gets a huge shot onto Vino, and instead of running into the box, he backs up while full boxing him. This allows him to block Vino's oncoming shot and get the kill. He almost certainly would have gotten this kill even if he didn't do this play, but by making this play, he stops himself from taking an unnecessary pump shot. Another example of this is in this game where they are at the end of the 9th zone and they use a nitro splash right before the 10th zone pulls. This means that as soon as the 10th zone pulls, they can rotate and get ahead of the rest of the lobby. The final little detail we'll look at is in this game where Peter is a solo and just made a 2x1. The issue is, this wall isn't his. He deals with this by staying in the zone in this other box to take the wall from a safe right shoulder peek. Most players would simply run out of the zone to take this wall, but if a team was right there, doing this would put Peter at risk of getting jumped on, but by taking this wall from the back box, he avoids this risk. These little details are the things that separates this duo from any other pro duo in North America, and is the reason why they are some of the favorites to win the global championships in under a month. These were 11 strategies that Peter and Pollo used to win FNCS, and if you enjoyed this video, then I think you'll also like my breakdown on the team that came second in this season's FNCS on the video on screen. Peace.